Today I am going to discuss one nation, one election or simultaneous election. First of all, what is one nation, one election or simultaneous election? It is holding general election as well as state assembly election both at same time. Indian polity is perennially in an election mode. On an average, 5 to 6 assembly elections happen every year. Such frequent electoral cycle end up negatively impacting administrative and developmental activities in the poll-bound state and impact the larger governance process in general. Let me give you a brief background of the simultaneous election in India. The first election was held in the year 1951 and 1952. This was simultaneous election. Prior to 1967, Indian National Congress gained majority at both center and the state. As a result of gaining majority at both central and the state, Indian National Congress was able to form government at both center and the state for 5 years. But this cycle got disrupted in the year 1967. The practice of holding simultaneous election in three subsequent general elections held in the year 1957, 1962 and 1967. However, due to premature dissolution of some legislative assembly in the year 1968 and 1969, the cycle got disrupted. The other factor for disruption of cycle past 1967 is that rise of regional parties and political instability. Dissolution of state legislative assembly prior to their tenure of 5 years, as I have discussed. Dissolution of Lok Sabha in the year 1970. In the year 1970, Lok Sabha was dissolved and a fresh election was conducted in the year 1971. So, this is a brief background of simultaneous election in India, how it was held and why it got disrupted. Now, I will discuss the pros and cons of holding simultaneous election. First, First of all, let us discuss the pros of holding simultaneous election. I would like to bring your attention to a graph here is that election expenditure by government in India towards Lok Sabha election. The figure along the y-axis denote income in rupee and the figure along the x-axis denote the year. We can clearly see that from 1952 till 2004, the expenditure of holding election in India was around 1000 crore rupees. But in the year 2014, this expenditure rose to around 4000 crore rupees. So there was a huge rise in the expenditure which government occur for election. The first benefit which simultaneous election will bring is that reduction in expenditure for Election Commission of India and political parties. Let me explain you by giving an example. Election Commission of India in the year 2014 has said that if simultaneous election was held in the year 2014, it will roughly amount to 4500 crore rupees. But the Bihar Legislative Assembly election in the year 2015 alone amount to 300 crore rupees. We can see that holding simultaneous election, that means the election at central level and election at all legislative assembly of the state will amount to 4500 crore rupees only. But in the year 2015, the Bihar Legislative Assembly election alone amounted to 300 crore rupees. There was a huge disparity or gap in this amount. The second thing is that respite from polarization events such as casteism. We have seen the inclination of Indian election towards polarization in the name of regionalism and casteism. Elections are also polarizing event which perpetuate caste, religion and communal issue because candidates are often forced to talk politically for the sake of electoral benefit. If we are holding simultaneous election, we can have rid of this process because if 4 or 5 elections are held every year, it will lead to polarization for 4 or 5 times. But if simultaneous election is held once in 5 years, it will lead to polarization once in 5 years, or we can get rid of polarization. The third thing which I would like to emphasize is that policy paralysis and governance deficit due to frequent imposition of moral code of conduct. During moral code of conduct, the government cannot announce new policies and program which eventually hampers the developmental process. The imposition of the code put on hold for many months at a stretch, and the entire development program and activities of the union and the state government most of the time in the poll bound state. It even affects the normal day-to-day life. The fourth thing which I would like to emphasize is higher focus on policy formulation rather than on election campaign, which means if government is engaged in frequent election, it will focus on election campaign rather than on developmental process. So to foster development, the need of the hour is simultaneous election in India. The last thing which I would like to emphasize is reduction in corruption and flow of black money. As you have all witnessed that during the election time or election campaign, there is lot of black money in the market and there is huge corruption. People are giving money for voting process, but when simultaneous election will come into the picture, the flow of black money in the market will reduce, the corruption will reduce. So these are some of the pros of holding simultaneous election in India. Now I would like to discuss the cons of holding simultaneous election in India. The first thing which I would like to highlight is that it is against the interest of regional party and lack of emphasis on local regional issues. These both points are similar to each other. Let me explain. In general election, people generally vote for the national interest, but at state legislative assembly election, people vote for their regional issues or local issues. If both election are clubbed together in the name of simultaneous election, then it will generally hampers the regional or the local issue, and it will hamper the regional and the local party. If there is a big party at center, it will win by majority vote in simultaneous election, and it will hamper the interest of the regional party. So this is one of the drawback of simultaneous election. It is against the federal structure. It is against the federal structure because critics also says that forcing simultaneous election is against democracy because it is trying to force an artificial cycle of electorate, and restricting the choice of voter is not correct, which is against the federal structure of India. The last thing which I would like to highlight is that the simultaneous election will ignore the practical difficulty, president rule or dissolution of assembly, which means that suppose that, for example, I am saying that India is going to conduct simultaneous election in the year 2024. Well and good, India conducted simultaneous election in 2024, but what will happen after that? Suppose that in the year 2025, 2 or 3 state legislative assembly has been dissolved and president rule has been imposed in that state. This will bring an end to the cycle of simultaneous election, and a fresh election need to be conducted in this state. So eventually the imposition of president rule will lead to the disruption of cycle of simultaneous election. So this is a practical difficulty which will be coming in the path of imposition of simultaneous election in India. Now I would like to highlight some of the way forward or suggestion that has been put forward by Law Commission of India, Standing Committee on Personal and Niti Aayog. Law Commission of India in its 117th report said that state assembly whose term is ending in 6 months after the general election can be clubbed, but result can be declared at the end of the tenure. Let me explain here. The next general election is going to be held in the year 2024, and the state legislative assembly whose term is going to end 6 months before or 6 months prior to 2024 can be clubbed together in general election. That means suppose that suppose for example Karnataka is going to end their legislative assembly session in the month of October or November 2023, so that this state legislative assembly of Karnataka will be clubbed with the general election of 2024, and there will be extension of 6 month working of Karnataka legislative assembly, but the result will be declared after the finish of the term. And suppose there is another state, let's take Bengal. Bengal is going to end its legislative assembly in the month of June 2024, and the election will be held in the month of May or April 2024. So the election of Bengal and the general election will be clubbed together, and the result will be declared after the completion of term of Bengal Legislative Assembly. The second thing, that standing committee on personnel said that election could be held in two phases. Election to some legislative assembly could be held during the mid-term of Lok Sabha. Election to remaining legislative assembly could be held with the end of the term of Lok Sabha. Niti Aayog has said that minimum one-time curtailment or extension of some state legislative assembly. That means if some legislative assembly is going to end their session in the year 2023, there will be extension in 1 year the working of state legislative assembly, and if some state legislative assembly is going to end their session in the year 2025, there will be curtailment of the working of legislative assembly for 1 year. This will be a one time measure or process, but government should keep in mind some fact that before implementation of one nation one poll, government should examine the idea. Government should talk with various stakeholders, debate with it, discussion with it. Also, the desired goal of having only one election every 5 years cannot be achieved overnight in the prevailing circumstances. It has to be achieved in stages. Constitutional amendment can be provided for extending or curtailing the term of one or more legislative assembly. So, these are some of the pros and some of the cons of holding simultaneous election in India, and these are some of the way forward which has been suggested by Law Commission of India, Standing Committee on Personnel and Niti Aayog. Hope you have understood it. Thank you.